Welcome to another DW Business Special, this time about the way ahead for Ukraine's economy. Joining me are Oksana Kozakiv, the Chief Executive of the Institute for Economic Research and Policy Consulting based in Kiev, and Dietrich Theiss, the CEO of UIFK Agro, a farming company based in Ukraine. Oksana, I'd like to start with you if I could. So Ukraine's economy fell 30.4% in 2022, according to preliminary data issued by the Economy Ministry. That's less than expected, but is, of course, a serious hit. So perhaps you could give us an overview on how the Ukrainian economy is coping at the moment during Russia's invasion.
Yes, the situation in economy is not so bad as it was expected at the beginning of invasion, but also this is a drop. It's very significant, and of course we can see a several stage of adaptation of Ukrainian economy to this very new and dangerous and not obvious situation. First of all, at the almost after invasion in the spring, Ukrainian we felt a very significant shock for a lot of companies, and it is clear for monthly GDP decline. It was at the beginning even 50%. That is why it was such not very optimistic forecast for the end for the end of the years. But nevertheless, Ukrainian business immediately start to do some measures for adaptation. First of all, it is less. It is in less amounts than it was expected. Decreased a number of staff and labor force, because it is a crucial problem when it was dropping production at the beginning of the year. It was decreased a number of the people due to migration, due to mobilization, and etc. But we conduct a monthly survey of businesses, and we see that this is a problem of adaptation for employment size for this new situation is not in such significant amount. So we didn't see the situation when the company, for example, dramatically decrease in their staff. But when anyway we should take into account. But when we are talking about Ukrainian economy this year, we are talking about the part of the company, the part of the economy which are in a control by Ukrainian government territory, so that company that are able to work. So the most significant contribution to this drop of Ukrainian GDP were from the side of these businesses and the side of the economy which were physically destroyed during the invasion, because first of all, Ukrainian lost like a temporary occupation or occupied territory. This is southern and eastern part of the country with significant share of the metallurgical plant production. This is first one which should. So this is the role and share of the metallurgy. In past, it was one of the important driver of Ukrainian economy development and Ukrainian GDP positive dynamic. Now we have a contrast situation. This the role of the metallurgy, I think, in the years significantly decreased due to a destruction of the facility. Another important point that these industries, this is some kind of in that territory which are controlled by Ukrainian government, and the industry which are support the everyday citizen life like a food industry, textile, and another issue which we need in your everyday life. This industry, after significant, of course, drop at the spring, they start not to growing, but at least finding the way of working in a new condition, because they have a strong demand for their production. And it is
a lot of it
also
has been about
important.
adaptation to the difficult times that we've seen. But I wanted to
Yeah.
focus down specifically a bit more kind of in the direction of what you were talking about, though. Of course, territories being occupying, key production facilities being occupied has been a blow to the economy. What about specifically the Russian attacks on critical infrastructure? We're talking about power in particular. How has that worsened how's that played a role in this worsening economic situation for Ukraine?
Yeah, it's unfortunately the role of this attack is significant, because this is a positive trend for which we observed and recorded during the summer and September, when we see very optimistic. We receive a very optimistic signal from the business and from the business expectation. It was physically impacted energy, but to energy infrastructure, impact negatively on the Ukrainian economy, on the Ukrainian business, because it creates some shortage of the electricity and problem with access. 76% of respondents of our monster survey in December said, in November said that this is a key problem for their businesses, not ability to take electricity in the amount of what they need. So it's a significant impact for Ukrainian economy, for some sectors, because of course here also Ukrainian business give us very brave practice and example of adaptation. For example, buying a transformator, and this is equipment for producing electricity by themselves. But this is work for small cafe, this is work for street business, but it's really problem for much more significant and higher companies, medium and large sales, large size. And of course, this is November, October, and November, and again December event create a significant negative impact for Ukrainian economy at all, and for manufacturing sector in particular, especially in the central regions. I cannot make an assessment now in some quantitative assessment, but yes, is some narrative
I think
result.
you've given a very good overview there. I think that the idea of this resilience and the flexibility of the Ukrainian people during extraordinarily trying times and during unspeakable atrocities as well that we've seen during this conflict, that has been clear, definitely, and that is what has helped, as you mentioned, for the economy to land at this point where it hadn't dropped as much as expected, the GDP. Meanwhile, Ukraine's grain exports have been key to the global supply. The country produces over 10% of the world's wheat, corn and barley. It also makes over 50% of the world trade in sunflower oil. Russia's blockade of ships out of key ports like Odessa drove up prices worldwide, making it hard for poor families worldwide to feed themselves. It also hit Ukraine's farmers hard. So, Dietrich, I'd like to bring you in on this, if possible. Before we talk about the current situation, how did that initial blockade and the initial invasion, in fact, affect your farming business?
It affects, and it is when we stopped exporting or selling our grain in February, we still had some open contracts to fulfill, and we couldn't export it because everything was blocked. Ports didn't receive. Actually, our farm was only 20 kilometers away from the front line, or let's say it was the front line like in Bakhmut today, but it's the next village, which was occupied by Russian army, was only 20 kilometers away from us. And in this time, it was very dangerous to move, and obviously, work on the field. So we had made some field work in March on those fields which are far away from the front line. But fortunately, when the Russian army drove of Kiev region, it was beginning of planting season, so we actually could perform more or less normal season in this year, even under the wartime. Of course, we had a lot of problems selling our goods. It was not the way like we did it before. We had still in September, October, some leftovers from the previous season. And only, I think, in October we managed to sell, or November managed to sell the rest of the season 21 and sell something from 22. The prices dropped by 40-80 euro per ton in comparison to the previous year. So all over the world, everybody claims the prices are going up, but for Ukrainian farmers, they went down.
So how would you describe the situation at the moment? I mean, that sounds like an extraordinarily difficult situation that you've had to get through over all of those months. Are you in a position of optimism at the moment, or is that still weighing on yourself, your company, and other farmers in Ukraine?
To be honest, particularly our farm, since we didn't suffer directly from any war activities, we had more problems, or we suffered more from the weather conditions in this year. We still have a lot of corn to harvest. What a lot of colleagues have to do because there was actually too wet. And the harvests are lower than expected, a little bit average or lower than average, together with less prices and more problems to sell the grain. Of course, it's financially not a very good not a very good year. Some farmers have to sell it even cheaper because they couldn't wait for a better moment because they need money. Financing by banks became more difficult than before. For us, it's the education it's of course difficult, but we are still optimistic to survive and continue after the war. The biggest problem for me is to sell the current harvest or the harvest from this year. I still have about 80-90% on stock, and I have to sell it until the next harvest will come. So of course I can take some leftovers, but I should sell about 70-80% of the harvest to have free space for the next harvest. Okay. And we can't move the next harvest. Yeah, we depending on the year, on the on the weather conditions, so we can't say we can.
That's a good point that you make. I'd like to get to that in just a second. I think it's a good time to look ahead now. The IMF predicts that Ukraine's economy will contract by 35% in 2023. However, that figure came before the latest GDP results, as we mentioned earlier, for 2022. So that figure that you're seeing now could still be revised. Also earlier in the year, the World Bank estimated that the cost of rebuilding Ukrainian infrastructure as being nearly $350 billion. We got in touch with the World Bank, who told us an updated report will come early this year and that they expect that figure to be substantially higher. That's due to the targeted infrastructure attacks. Oksana, I'd like to come back to you just to ask you what your economic predictions are for Ukraine in 2023. Of course, it depends on the course of the war, absolutely, but do you have various scenarios in mind?
First of all, we need to remember that a high level of uncertainty exists, and it is high to do any forecasting. Is among our respondents, 55% of the enterprise cannot say what will happen in 2 years, but another part of the company where rather optimistic. So, but of course, recent event in November and December regarding to infrastructure decrease this optimism. But this is a situation when we do some kind of the forecast. In one way, a high level of uncertainty. First of all, due to we don't know when the active phase of the war will be ended, and it is a key issue because we understand that nobody will invest on rebuild in any infrastructure and another economical object if the war in a field. So this is some kind of the precondition. In case, and this is contributing to uncertainty, I think the basic scenario for Ukraine for next year would be we stop this is declining and which we have this year, and the next year the GDP growth would be in a level 3.5%. So we are still we will be in the same level, so we are not dropping more, and that's I think it would be a good scenario, because I don't want to talk about the worst scenario, because it will be continuation of the dropping, but of course, taking into account the statistical basic and very deep drop this year, of course, anyway, there's from point of view the macroeconomic statistics, the situation anyway will be better. But when we are talking about what is really a trend in economy, so I think the basic issues is like we have finished the stop our decline, and the economy. Right. Are at the same level like this year, like at the end of the year, and then if the situation is security situation are like now, not better, not worse. So I think we can expect some growing. First of all, this is due to medium and small businesses, because the small businesses, it's maybe their contribution for the overall GDP is not significant, but not high. But in terms of everyday employment and in terms of creation of demand for another good, because population demand, it was important driver of in past Ukrainian economy, it will help us to keep this small growing tendency. But of course, in the background.
And I would say, of course, I like also that your optimism as well. If the security situation improves as hoped, then we will see growth next year, 2024. So let's hope we do head in that direction. Dietrich, I'd also like to return to you. And they say that the biggest worry for any business, of course, is uncertainty. But I imagine that applies even more to Ukraine's critical agriculture industry. You're bound to the seasons. You're trying to plan ahead with your planting now for what you can possibly predict the situation could be around harvest time. So how are farmers like yourself planning for the year ahead?
We changed already half a year ago our production plans. We planted more wheat than maize. So we used maize and plant more wheat, because it's a little bit cheaper and you have less tons per hectare. So we have a lower volume for the next season, and we are more flexible. We plan with less inputs, what means, of course, less yields per hectare. We bought so far only roughly half of the seeds for the spring season, because we are not sure that we planned everything. So this will be decided a little bit later, when we see that we can sell our goods and get our storage free. So we still have to make some decisions about spring planting season. What's actually every of our colleagues are doing, in not in the war zone. They of course probably can't work at all. They probably in some areas where the Russian army robbed all the machines, they probably don't have machines to do it. But in areas like ours, everybody reduces imports, of course, and probably shift a little bit the crops in order to have cheaper crops or crops cheaper to produce, and with less yields per hectare to reduce the volume for the next season. So, but we can't we can't close the farm for half a year. It's like a factory. So we are connected to the seasons, and in April we have to start our spring planting season, and we can't do it in June, July. So this gives us a little bit, or the sector a little bit of continuity, because we have to do work, we have to do the work, and farmers are used to do it. So all our colleagues around us, there was almost every sector was planted in our area.
It's going to be a difficult year ahead by the sounds of it. It's you're bound to the season. There's nothing that you can do to and also to the course of the war as well. That's extraordinarily difficult for anyone in the agricultural industry to go through there in Ukraine. But yeah, as Oksana said, I mean, let's hope that the security situation improves in Ukraine, and that 2024 will be the year of growth. But it certainly looks like the time ahead for 2023 is going to be a trying one for everyone.
Yeah, just come back to the electricity problem. Yeah, electricity is also crucial for the export. All ports are running with electricity, and we had some problems by delivering because ports didn't work due to no electricity. So Russia not supposed to attack the ports. So infrastructure is still in place, but without electricity they can't run. So electricity could also very much delay export, what creates a lot of problems for the next season.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we kept coming back to during the course of this, is just how important critical infrastructure has been to the development of the broader economy as well as agriculture. So that's definitely going to be important, whether Russia does keep up those attacks on Ukrainian key infrastructure. So that's all for now. I'd like to thank our guests, Oksana Kozyakiv and Dietrich Theiss, for joining us. And thank you for watching. And while you're here, why not check out some of our other great business videos from DW News.